This discussion is Women in Diversity and Energy with Ruth George and Shalaya Morissette. So a little bit about our event sponsors. So CWEEL is the Council on Women in Energy and Environmental Leadership. We support the role of women in energy and environmental fields through career development, mentorships, scholarships, and networking. We support AEE's diversity goals for Equal by 30 campaign. And CWEEL New England is a chapter of AEE New England as well. We also have the sponsor AABE, the American Association of Blacks in Energy. This is a national association of energy professionals founded and dedicated to ensure the input of African Americans and other minorities into the discussions and developments of energy policy, regulations, R&D technologies, and environmental issues. Last but not least, we also have AESP, Northeast Chapter. AESP is the Association of Energy Services Professionals focused on energy efficiency, demand response, and DERs, and are dedicated to building a clean and efficient future. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce Ruth George. She will be, moderating our discussion today. Ruth was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and moved to the United States in 1990. She attended the University of South Florida and has some pretty impressive credentials from her time. She's got a double major in interdisciplinary social service with a concentration in Africana studies and psychology, and a second degree in women and gender studies. In 2015, Ruth attained a graduate certificate in gender leadership and public policy from the Center of Women in Politics and Public Policy at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. She holds a master's in public administration from Suffolk University as well. She previously served as a neighborhood and ethnic liaison to Mayor Walsh, and also acted as manager of engagement and outreach for the Department of Youth Engagement and Employment for the City of Boston. Currently, Ruth is supervisor of equity, strategic partnerships, and workforce development for Eversource Energy. In her role, she utilizes her certified diversity executive certification to administer procedural, distributional, and structural equity to expand access to energy efficiency programs in the workforce. Ruth, I'll pass it over to you to introduce Shalaya and kick off our discussion.
So thank you for that, Danielle. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'm so excited to introduce our guest speaker today, which is Shalaya Morissette, who's currently the Chief of Minority Business and Workforce Division for the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity for the U.S. Department of Energy. We are so ecstatic that one, her role exists, and two, that she has been selected and appointed to do this work because she has a world of experience that is really going to transform the experience that so many populations have and have not had with the Department of Energy in this country. And so just some quick background around Shalaya Morissette is a chief, as I mentioned, of Minority Business and Workforce Division of the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity for the Department of Energy. She is a highly sought after collaborator and co-conspirator for in the clean technology space. Most recently, she has served in national leadership in the American Association of Blacks in Energy and at National Grid in regulatory compliance and safety. Last year, she took on an additional role as an engineering teacher to the 11th and 12th graders in Boston. Quite commendable, I would say, delivering a curriculum for engineering with energy in mind. Previously, she served as the first African-American board member of the New England Women in Energy and as the Georgia Gwinnett College Alumni Association board member and a committee member for Browning the Green Space. She has been engaged in the nonprofit higher education space as a strong advocate for elevating minorities in the energy transition. Shalaya's passion for bringing young people into the clean energy industry has also been supported with her work from Girls Inc. and Right Boston. Shalaya received her bachelor's of business and degree from George Gwinnett College and her master's of education degree from Cambridge College. As a lifetime learner, she's continued her education by pursuing a second bachelor's degree in nuclear engineering technology with an accelerator from I cannot pronounce the school, but you'll clarify it for me, Shalaya, Accelerator College.
Celsius.
So,
Yeah.
there you go. Thank you for that, Shalaya. We're so excited that you have joined us today. Such an extensive background. I know everyone here today is so enthused to hear more about you. I know I've spent quite a bit of time, speaking about your bio. And we have, I want to acknowledge all of everyone who registered and prepared questions for us to ask. We really do appreciate that. It's a way of really building your voice, everyone's voice into this space. And we've selected some of those questions, as of course you'd imagine we wouldn't have the time to do all of them, but we did try to theme them and collectively put them together. And as mentioned earlier, we will leave about 10 minutes towards the end to open up the floor for any really important questions that individuals wanted to ask that wasn't able to be asked. And before I kick us off, Shalaya, is there anything you kind of want to open up with before I start with the questions?
Yeah. Hi. Right. Hi. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that it's connected to home. Right now I'm in DC. Been traveling like crazy, as all of you could imagine. So hi, thank you to everybody that's actually joined. Sometimes doing these virtual events, we get so many people that register and just a few show up. But I always believe that folks that show up are the best of the best. So thank you. Thank you for being here. And Ruth, it's awesome to see you. I feel like I haven't actually had eyes on you. We've done a lot of phone calls, but it's good to see your face.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. As always, it's a pleasure for me to work with you. I was actually just speaking not too long ago to this group, and I said one thing about Shalaya: she always invites me to the most fantastic things, and then she always leaves me with work. There's not, to know you is to love you. There's some call to action, and I think it's commendable, and it's a reflection of the work that you continue to do for this country. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right in. The first question we have is, how did you become interested in the energy space? And what advice would you have for someone with interest in energy, but perhaps not a mechanical engineering background, which is often considered the traditional route to a career in energy?
I think the first part of that is, one, you have to really understand that it's a business. Energy is a business. And so as such, it needs all of the working pieces as any other industry. And so secondly, I would remind folks, whoever asked this question, right, whoever submitted it, that engineers are great, right? They're critical to what we do, but without the rest, their work is useless, right? We need infrastructure. We need folks to actually build it. We need the financials. We need everything that supports it. Everything from facilities to security to cybersecurity is needed in this space. And so because you're not a mechanical engineer does not mean that there's not a space for you here, which is why I'm so passionate about talking to young people and people that aren't in industry about coming into this space as quickly as you can. And so for me, I looked around at a point in my career and I said, I want something stable, but I want something that's also growing. And energy at the time was where it was at. And so I went to a career fair. And they didn't like me. They didn't like me initially. I had everything they needed. And I finally got a follow-up interview and I got an offer before I left the building. So that's sort of the start of this craziness that is now my life.
Wow. Persistence. There you go.
Yeah.
The next question we have is, what changes to the academic system might you suggest to empower the next generation of diverse energy leaders? And what can those of us outside of the education do to support the younger generation?
So I love this question because obviously I've been teaching for the last year with 11th and 12th graders. And I was teaching a curriculum that I helped write that had energy as its focus. And so just because you're not in the classroom, I would imagine that most people on this call are not in the classroom. They are likely in energy in some capacity, but you have an obligation. Any person that you engage with, any person, young, old, indifferent, you have an obligation to educate them. Take any interaction and turn it into a learning opportunity. I can tell you my daughter's 5. She understands what kinetic energy is. It's very easy to say, run around in a circle, right? What's that? That's kinetic energy. What's your potential energy? Stand still. And she can understand it. And so those basic fundamentals can be introduced at a really young age. Even if you don't think they're capable, try introducing it. When they're out in the world and you see a substation, show them what that is, explain it if you have that knowledge, and push yourself a little bit more to learn more so that you can teach someone else. Also challenge yourself in those spaces of, do I really understand what I do? And can I explain it to someone else? And so I would say for our actual education system, there are so many ways in which we could be introducing energy early. I remember teaching and some of my students saying, when I asked them, I said, go home and find out how your home is heated. And they said, Miss, do you think my mom will know that? And I explained, well, clearly she pays the bill, right? And so it's likely that they will know what is heating their home. That simple conversation opened up a world to them of, what does my utility bill look like? What is my home heated by? Where does this come from? They came back into the classroom with more and more questions. And so it got them interested because they're using energy every day. And so I would suggest, if I could be so kind, to say we should be introducing all things energy at a much younger age and revisiting every other year, right? That would be my ideal, if not every year in some way. I think before they leave our K through 12, there's a need to sort of show them what we have to offer. And a lot of that is going into the classroom as a speaker and sharing your story. But more than that, I encourage people to always engage in what students are doing, right? We've all been 16. Everybody on this call has been 16 before, and probably has a belly button, right? Simple commonalities there. And so it's very largely the part is to remind yourself of what you were like when you were 16. Most of us were self-absorbed and we only cared about our little bubble, right? Like, whether it's from what clothes am I wearing, what music am I listening to, what me and my friends are talking about. And so to get to the teenagers, you really have to go to them and engage with the projects that they're working on. If they're in their class the way that my students were, building, miniature electric vehicles, right? Go talk to them, explain gear ratios, talk to them about what they're doing. It's so beneficial to meet them where they are, to get them to understand that you're not alone, right? What you don't understand at one point, I didn't understand. And so again, reintroducing information and then exposure. More companies should be saying to every public school and private school in their area, how do I connect with you? How do I bring your students to me? How do I give them high school internships? How do I expose them? Everything across the spectrum. They should be seeing what a solar farm looks like. They should be seeing the innovation. You know how many kids would be so excited to see what a control room looks like? I mean, that's movie stuff. We all know what it is if you've ever worked in a place that has a control room, but it's interesting. It brings to life what they can only see on TV or in a movie. But to give them the experience to go into those places, think about when you were in school. The things you remember are the field trips. Go into a classroom, encourage your company to go in and do it. Again, calls to action. Sorry, Ruth, more homework. I saw that in the chat. Yes, there's always homework, but those are the simple things. On the higher education piece, I would really say strong partnerships. We know that most higher education facilities are doing some sort of research for minorities in particular. There's a need to pull them in because it's not always the go-to. So I certainly encourage that piece. Again, bringing people from industry into the classroom. I would hope that someday there are programs for large companies to actually let some of their employees be on loan to schools and teach, right? even if it's for a month at a time, a 6-week session, or the whole year, the way that I did. Thank you, former employer, for letting me do that. It was the greatest experience of my life. And that is also second to even this role, to be able to touch young people and provide them with information on our industry.
Thank you for that, Chief Morissette. I can't say I agree anymore. Like there's this gap in knowledge around energy across our country, and it has impeded our ability to really build out infrastructure and the workforce, the labor market, as it relates to talent. I mean, everyone's feeling that now, but in general, there's a historical gap as it relates to energy. And I know the company that I'm working for, we are thinking at Eversource about our education programs. How do we revamp them? And one of the things I did when I first came in was make sure that we are starting to talk about career exploration at a very young age. What does an HVAC technician look like? What does a home energy auditor look like? And you can show a photo to a 5-year-old and point out what that is, and they can start to learn that earlier on. So we're, I lock and step there in agreement that it makes a world of a difference, because if you can't talk about it, if you don't have language for it, it's really hard to attain it and achieve it and apply any of it. So it's so great to hear you kind of mention some really important instrumental steps that have to be taken in order to support the next generation of young adults into clean energy.
But Ruth, I would say more,
Mhm.
even more in that question is show young people the financials. Show them
Yes.
how much money you can make in this sector. Show them what their potential is. Show them what a paycheck looks like, right? Understand that most teenagers have never seen a paycheck, not their parents' paycheck. They don't know what real money could look like, right? Even working at McDonald's, I had kids come to me and say, Miss, what's FICA? What's this? Why are they taking money from me? Help them understand where their money goes. That gives them a greater appreciation for society in general. But show them the money, show them how much money they could save with everything from driving an electric vehicle to weatherization in their homes, from soup to nuts. Show them the dollars. They understand money very well,
Mhm.
especially in buying clothes or video games, whatever that looks like for them. But show them where the money is. Start where they are.
Thank you. I think that's a very valid point, because it's connected. It's all interconnected. The next question that we have here: what is the biggest challenge you see in the energy space when it comes to diversity, and how do employers consciously create an environment that removes those challenges?
I just want whoever wrote this question to know that this is, for public speaking engagements, a loaded question, just so you know this. I mean, the biggest challenge is access, right? It's access to clean energy, it's access to opportunity, it's access to the financial opportunities, it's access to information, right? That's the biggest challenge. I think, you know, we have a challenge of making sure everybody's involved in the energy transition, right? That's the biggest part. How do you get to people? And you got to understand this role going simply from Northeast to the entire country. It's massive to think about. Most people don't have to think about anything in life at this scale, right? Understand all the challenges that an
No, I know,
individual
'cause
sees,
there's
right?
no magic fairies to give
Like
it to me.
there's a huge amount of things to consider when I answer that question, but most of it is access. Um, you look at the landscape of the country. When you talk about oil, it's a place where it's been unionized for a long time. Unions haven't always been friendly to minorities, so that's an issue. There are folks that are scrutinized if they have unions or don't have unions, one way or the other. Like, why don't you have them? Are you protecting your people? What does that look like? That's a massive challenge, right? For different parts of the country. I mean, it's also the way that we frame our businesses in energy. There, in my opinion, are not enough B corporations, not enough social enterprises to tackle, the issues that are happening in minority communities in particular. And so that's really like, how is the wealth spread out? Right. I know it's a big deal in mostly solar companies, right? That they are mostly comprised of B corporations, which is great for them. But we need that more across the industry, just so that you can get more dedicated resources to certain communities, right? And that wealth is spread out a bit more. And so I would suggest that even, the way that we get through that for companies is thinking about joint ventures, right? Whether that's minority businesses teaming up together to be larger consortiums to tackle an energy issue, or provide services in that area, or it's the big guys saying, look, we're going to make it a community benefit that we will partner with a diverse company to support us in any capacity, right? That might be construction, but that may also be tech services, whatever that looks like, right? But that's a commitment that those companies have to do on their own. If we start to mandate it, I think that it will get very ugly, right? We do it internally here where we're asking for what's your equity action plan? What will be your community benefits agreement with subcontractors? What does that look like? What are you going to do if we give you money for the communities that you're in? So there's that piece. And then for companies internally that have DEI initiatives, I ask that you actually empower those groups. There is a need for them to be connected to HR, but there's a need for them to have the financial backing to actually do something. I would also say avoid the tokenization of your Black employees or your brown employees, your Hispanic employees. Avoid that. Sometimes there's a misconception that because you're Black, you are a DEI specialist. That is not true. Many people in my career have approached me and said, well, you're very pro-minority. Could you come and be our workforce specialist for DEI? No, I can't. That is not my background. Because I'm Black does not equate that I know all things diversity. I know that as you are working with other people of color at your company, don't do that to them. Work on that. Changing your culture is a big deal. So that's my big answer to that twofold question.
Thank you. I mean, I think that was a comprehensive answer, but it was one that was needed. There was a lot to unpack there. The next one that we have is, how do organizations encourage diverse applicants on the same heel as what you just mentioned, from recruitment to job descriptions and representation to company culture? What comes first, changing company culture or hiring diverse candidates? Chicken or the egg?
Change the culture first. You can go out and hire a bunch of people of color, a bunch of folks with diverse backgrounds, and you won't be able to retain them if your company culture is not friendly to them. Understand that there are a lot of options. This industry is massive, and there are tons of transferable skills. And so as a person of color, as a woman, as a mom, and I walk into a space that's not friendly to me, I know that I have options. I'm probably overqualified, right? I've probably got tons of education. If I'm in this space, right, I've got the experience, I've got the knowledge, I've got the willpower to do whatever is asked of me. And so for companies, you've got to work on you first. Understand that you have biases, understand that you are not friendly. Why are you not friendly? It may not be on purpose, right? There are things like a company game night. Understand that if you have just hired 10 Black people to your staff, and one or all of your categories are very elitist activities that Black folks may not be exposed to, depending on where they've grown up, right? I can tell you, I've never been skiing in my life. Nobody's ever offered for me to go skiing. So if that's a category, I don't have anything to input, right? And so those are the simple things that sort of are not friendly. It's almost like the same is true if I'm a woman, it's mostly male dominated, and all of the categories for game night are sports related. Doesn't mean that I can't participate, but we know that the generalization is that women are not as enthusiastic about sports as men are, right? It's simple things like that about being inclusive that you need to understand about changing your culture. You're not doing it to discriminate someone, but you need to diversify what you're doing, right? It's also including them in that process of like, what would you like to do? Would these things be of interest to you? It doesn't have to be necessarily race-based, right? That's a lot of times that's the default, but there are plenty of other things to do as it relates to team building or just general company culture, right? That's what's available. So change the culture first and know that if you don't, we will leave. right? And I see somebody wrote that we're sick of golf tournaments. I will tell you, when I took this job, I started golfing and I got lessons. More so because I knew that that might be part of the job. I wasn't sure, but I said, okay, push yourself a little bit more to learn something. I can't say that I love it, but I can't say that I hate it. So I'm with you in that sense. You need to do something different, but that also means on the other side, if you've never tried these particular activities or you don't have any knowledge as a person of color, that you should maybe educate yourself or try something new. Be open to it and have some understanding that it can be a conversation, that some folks don't know what they don't know, and not that it's on your shoulders to educate them, but you can certainly educate yourself, right? That was my whole attempt in trying to learn golf and do some other things that I feel like I've never done before, right? That I might be asked to do.
Mhm. And I'd like to add to that. I think it's also, when we think about diversity, we need to diversify the understanding of that. It's about individuals who have different lived experiences, cultural backgrounds, who are able-bodied or not. And thinking about those individuals when you create a space, it's something as simple as, recently we did a supplier diversity summit. And for the breakfast that was there, we had coffee and bagels and donuts, but then I added empanadas,
Mhm.
because there are populations that were going to be coming there that were ethnically not of American background. And I wanted to acknowledge that their dietary interest too. And so it's simple things like that that build inclusion, where people feel like, I feel received. You're acknowledging that my background is different, but our mission is still the same. And so I agree with you. I think if you bring in individuals with that perspective, but you create space for them to actually provide that insight, it's not just about hiring a group of diverse individuals. It's about giving them actual real power, right, and influence and space to make cultural change. Because if not, they're just more bodies in a room and pictures, individuals and pictures, and that doesn't really improve it doesn't help you innovate your work. So thank you for that, and sharing.
There's so much. I mean,
Yeah.
Ruth, when you think about this simple question, there's a gentleman that I recently saw speak. He's the CEO of Sodexo, and he shared that every company that he's worked for, it was his intention to make sure that he had more women on his teams. So think about the top 12 soccer players in the world, okay? And think about, they're all voted on by each other of who's the best one. If you look at that list, you're immediately going to say, one, if I wanted to make a team out of these guys, it's not a good idea. They're all the best of the best, but they will not make the best team. So a lot of times you need to think about who's the best person for the team. If I have a bunch of white males, they all may have a little bit of diversity, right, in terms of their upbringing and what have you, but they're not giving the perspective of other people that you may be affecting. So what this guy did, he said, I've got a team of 10. His recruiters went out and he said, bring me at least one woman, bring me at least one person of color. And so they kept not doing it. And so on the fourth time, he said, if you don't bring me a woman, I'm going to fire these people and you. Bring me someone. Finally, they brought a woman. She was the best candidate. He hired her. And when the same thing started to happen, he said, okay, here's the alternative. I will fire the men on my team and we will be a smaller team. He actually did this. I heard this man say this. He did it. He said, if there's not enough women, then we'll fire the men. He has had some of the most dedicated teams because he understands what a woman may go through to get where she is. Let's say that there's one woman at an engineering firm. It is likely that she's the best of the best because she's had to put up with so much. That is his line of thought. So understand, when you recruit, don't interview just one because it's a check of a box. Push your recruiters. Think about the relationships that you actually have in business and industry, right? If you don't have those relationships, what does your network look like? If you are hiring people that will go through the same practices to continue to recruit, figure it out. Do something different. If you want different talent, if you want something different in your business, look elsewhere.
Thank you for that. Really great response. Next question we have is, what can companies do better to enable enable impactful data-driven approaches to DEI?
So I want to tell you that they're all collecting and they're doing a great job. I don't have access to that information, right? But I do want to make sure that we all understand on this call and that industry understands, if you have a brain, you have bias. And so many companies need to work towards redacting their bias in particular. So when you think about, let's say you're recruiting for cybersecurity and you pull up the top 40 schools in the country, and then you narrow down for only cybersecurity degrees. That is a really small sector. Now, I think we can all agree on this call that calculus is calculus. The information is the same for calculus when you go to MIT or if you go to a community college. It does not matter where you are in the country. The information is the same. Consider that there are small biases that rule people out, what you may think is small, right? That can ruin your collection, right? You've off people that you really should be considering. They have what you need. So that would be my overall to that of remove your bias when you're collecting data and when you're analyzing it. Also have the right people analyzing your data. If you're trying to figure out why Black people aren't purchasing solar, a white guy that lives in Missouri may not understand that group well enough to understand the culture of why people of color aren't buying solar at the level that white people across the street are. You won't know that unless you employ people that are part of that culture, right? It's very difficult to do. So those are my suggestions for those companies.
Thank you for that. Diversity and kind of the thinking, location, all of that matters. Next question we have is, what is your or DOE's moonshoot for the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity? Any personal bucket list goals that you hope to accomplish during your tenure as chief?
There's a lot. So the best moonshot is me being out of a job and this department not existing. That would mean the ultimate success, that we as a society have changed. There's no longer a need for this because we're all doing what we should do, right? Obviously, we know that that's not in the very near future, but maybe in my lifetime, maybe in my career, we can move the needle that much that this office sort of goes away, even though it's been around since 1978. And even back then, a group of folks in Congress that were predominantly white said, we need this office. So somebody was thinking even then, but my personal bucket list for this role, I'd love the ability to give out loans, right? We don't have it now, even though it's in our legislation. And so that's something that we're working on. Ultimately, it's to really increase the awards and contracts to MBEs, right? If I can move that to more like 20, 30%, that would be amazing for this role. Really, I want to see the support of the innovation in MBEs, right? There are a lot of people that have amazing ideas and they're not getting awarded. They're not getting their shot, whether it's because they don't know about these opportunities. Like I can tell you right now, SBIR is a program that has billions of dollars, and these are non-diluted funds. In other words, if you give us your idea, we can't go back and make it up ourselves, okay? If you get awarded, the first award is between $200,000 and $250,000, grant money. Okay. But there's also support, right? You get access to a lot of folks and a lot of other resources to support your idea. Ultimately, the program looks to bring an idea to commercialization. In that second year, if you do well and we're like, okay, we need more funding, they give you $1 million. In that third and fourth year, you get another $1 million. The idea here is that we make businesses in the US, because that's a requirement, we make them first to market. That's what we're trying to do with that one program. And so I can tell you right now, the participation of minorities in those programs is under 10%, right? We're talking billions of dollars. We're talking about 200 awards every 6 months of $200,000 to $250,000 each. I need to increase that participation for minorities. I need them to get access, which means I need to make sure they know about the opportunities first. I need to educate them on what they need to even apply. There are requirements. Remember, government is risk averse. We are playing with federal dollars, tax dollars to invest. We are not going to make loose investments, we hope, right? They need to make sense. But those are the big goals. Personally, I want to make sure that I get to places that we sometimes forget about. Places like Arkansas. Be honest with you, I had never in my mind thought that, oh my gosh, there are plenty of people of color in Arkansas. Well, of course there are. There's a military base there. There's tons of stuff going on. But I've grown up in Boston. I've lived all over, but never have I ever thought to go there. So I want to make sure that I get to places that are not necessarily the traditional South, where we see in the census tract where most people of color are. I want to make sure that I'm hitting all of minorities, right? There are different classifications. There are some agencies that don't consider women minorities, right? Understand that we do, but I want to make sure that I'm touching as many people as I can. I don't want to leave this role and say I didn't educate enough people. And so that means spreading myself and my team all over the country very quickly. We don't know what's going to happen. And so I have to move rapidly fast, which means I'm graying and I'm losing sleep every night because it's worth it. So that's my personal goal.
Thank you. That's I'm not surprised always. I always tell you if the most is a person, which is a beautiful thing because you got to have big vision in order for our country to properly develop, and especially in a way that's inclusive for the populations that exist in it. And so the next question we have here is, how is DOE measuring the progress of DEI efforts to increase diversity in the workforce?
So I want to make sure I break this out into segments. We don't necessarily measure it outside of DOE, right? There's tons, like we have an office of jobs and that's what they do. They sort of analyze the market, that sort of thing. But progress, that determines that there's a goal. We don't dictate that externally. However, internally, we certainly have goals. We know that DOE is traditionally white and male, right? We have a lot of hard sciences here, right? We have several offices. I think we have 4 offices just based on nuclear here. And keep in mind, everybody on this call, I think I'm on my 9th or 10th week into the role. And so I'm relearning my alphabet. There are so many acronyms to know in government. So there's tons to know here, but we are setting ourselves up for success, right? We are looking at all the numbers. We're looking at the number of applicants that come in. We're breaking it down by minorities. Then we're making sure that we're looking at, okay, how many folks are we interviewing? And then breaking that even further, how many people are we hiring of that group that we've interviewed initially? How long do they stay? So there's a whole group dedicated just to that. And then they're sharing internally. I wish I could share it with you all, but that's not my my purview. So I couldn't. You're trying to get me fired here already? It's early. Give me time to get myself in trouble. Good trouble.
I was gonna say, we're open to some good trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the next question we have is, thinking about just the different stakeholders in this field, from manufacturers, small businesses, how do folks participating today from universities, small businesses, manufacturing companies, utilities, program administrators, etc., support work with the benefits from the Department of Energy broadly, and more specifically with your office?
There's so much to say with that question. So to educate folks on this call, if you don't know what Justice 40 is, I will tell you. It means that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments must flow to disadvantaged communities, right? Most of what you just said are likely in that group. So we've designated 144 programs here at DOE that are subjected to that. That's a lot of money on the table. But let me give you perspective on those kind of numbers. I think we have $125 billion just set aside for battery manufacturing. Yeah, battery critical material recycling, that's 125 million, 50 million just for innovation for that SBIR program. We've got 100 million just with our loan program office. That's the floor of their loans, right? And they have 4 unique programs, one in auto manufacturing, one for natives, one is just for clean energy, right? And so and then that's broken down into different groups. There's 12 million just for advanced manufacturing. There's 40 million for energy auditors. There's 10 million just for career skills training. And we'll take a proposal from anybody, right? That's unsolicited, but there's a ton of money that's already been released and there's more to come. We've got 12 billion in funding. There's just, I mean, there's so much money here. There's 80 million just in solar manufacturing and workforce, right? There's 11 million to support states, right? Just in their security plans, right? Like we know what this is sort of like predicting for the future. There's 2.6 billion for carbon capture just on those projects. There's 2.4 for advanced nuclear reactors. There's I think 3.1 billion for energy efficiency just for home upgrades. So there's tons of ways to engage, but the one that I'm most excited about for minority businesses is one that I'm doing. So I'm telling you now, this is the first time I'm talking about it publicly. Thursday, February 23rd, 2023, I'm doing an in-person event here at DOE. They're going to let me bring 325 businesses into DOE. And those folks will get the opportunity to attend some sessions, to actually learn how to do business with us. But on the other side to that, I'm also bringing in CDFIs. These are community banks. It is slated that $27 billion will come out of EPA. It is likely that these community banks will get that funding. And a lot of them are looking to invest in clean energy. To bring these folks together in this building and let them network one-on-one with each other and provide the education that they need to know where the dollars are is monumental. I get that that's only 325. So we're doing the same exact program the following week, and it will be virtual so that folks that can't get to us, trust me, I understand there is limitations, right? Whether that's funding to get here, all of that good stuff. There will be a conversation of what happens next with that 27 billion. This is monumental to be able to bring this many people and educate them. That is how you engage. Or you can call me directly. I do answer. Yes, you can get an invite, Dr. J. Absolutely.
That is really monumental. I mean, I think it's been a long time coming, seeing our federal government or governments sometimes in general engage directly with the populations as a way to acknowledge, as a way to address what you mentioned earlier, access. It's one of the biggest barriers that exists, the transfer of like access to information and understanding how to do what is required. So it's great to hear that you all are taking some really important and impressive first steps in doing that. The next question we have is, how might the energy transition have an impact on the racial wealth gap? What steps can diverse communities take to avoid being left behind? This makes me think about the Industrial Revolution. Many people will reference that environmental justice communities, brown and black communities, women were left behind. And it created a huge wealth gap in the country that exists now. So how do we make sure that we do not repeat the Industrial Revolution?
That's my job. That's what I lose sleep at night about. There's the simple stuff. If you want to, yes, I will put that in the chat, and I'll make sure that you get it. Of course, I want to tell people, go and read the information. Government has a practice of just putting things on their website, which is really old and antiquated in terms of its look. It lives there. Everything that I'm sharing with you, with the exception of the conference, is available online. But I know that, again, accessibility, it is overwhelming. If you go to grants.gov and you make your account and you start looking, there are hundreds of thousands of opportunities to engage with government, to get contracts, right? The problem is, if you don't speak the language of the people, they're never going to engage. We have information at our fingertips. It's there, but you don't know what you don't know. So for me, I tell folks when I come into communities, and I've been all over the country already in just 8 weeks, here's the details. Go online and start looking, figure out where your niche is. What is it that you do? What do you have access to? But more importantly, start looking at your states. There is $5 billion to be issued between now and 2024 just on the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan. Look at these plans if you want to start a business. The money is there within your state. Look for education opportunities. There are tons of webinars that my office does, that all the offices at DOE does, but you've got to seek it out a little bit, right? So there are also scholarships, there's fellowships available. Some of the programs run through my office. We have a program down in Louisiana where we've partnered with a school. We funded them to make sure that they had equipment to teach folks to how to become linemen, how to do all things in energy, right? We also provide scholarship dollars for that. So there's great programs here that I would have never known about had I not started asking questions and working here. So you have to be invested in your own future, right? As a community, that's really important. We have to have community solutions, and we have to empower them to make sure that they're in a position to do the paperwork. Government is mostly paperwork. Good gosh, it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of reading. But if that's not your strong suit and you are an established business, you need to be hiring grant writers. You need to be hiring for things that you know you may not be good at, but you understand your business. And so if you can articulate appropriately to someone that can write it for you, then do that. There are programs even here. We have technical assistance offices in every single state that you can call, that you can walk into, and they will help you. They may not write it for you, but they will answer every question you have.
Thank you for that. Yep, some towns do grant
Yes, they do.
classes as well. Yeah. So we have a final question, but before I go into that question, I want to open it up to everyone that's here to please utilize the chat. I know it was mentioned earlier. Thank you, Danielle, for posting that. If there are some additional questions that we have not asked and something that you're kind of yearning to learn more about, this is the best time to do that. I know we are here until 1:30, so I don't want to rush the process of you being able to share and having access to Chief Morissette. So I'll give it another 30 seconds or so to see if anyone adds an additional question. I know you did cover a lot within this hour. The questions were quite comprehensive. So it was good to hear you kind of unpack a lot of that. Definitely. And I'm inspired to know that, we are finally heading to a more just transition as a country, and it's being, that it's being thought about thoughtfully, that we have leaders of diverse backgrounds, that are in this place, and it's like we're rejuvenating energy around this, and that's going to have some, some really important, meaningful impacts in all of our communities. And so I haven't seen.
I see a question. I see a question.
Or maybe I
Speak to the importance of mentorship. So, Dr. J, mentorship is crucial, but it's important that you have mentors that don't necessarily look like you, that don't have your experience. An even better way for mentorship to work is being the mentor to someone that's in your company that is considered the mentee. Sometimes that C-suite wants to know what's happening, what they're doing wrong, how they can do better. I've worked for a couple of organizations that did it, and it worked out really, really well, where you'd be surprised how much you can influence decisions because that person knows that they are tapped in. More so than having folks that just tell them yes, that they're always right. Having someone that can give you perspective is a great way to develop, more so than a mentorship, but a friendship. Developing trust between two people is important. I think sometimes we go into mentorships thinking that there's a script, right? I have to ask, will you be my mentor? And what does that mean? And when someone asks you to be a mentor, you need to sort of define for yourself and for them what this looks like. If you are not in a space to be a friend, someone that they can call at the end of the day and say, look, this is what happened to me. What do you think I should do? Is this career suicide? Is this something that we shouldn't do? How do I move about accordingly, right? Like, these are all real questions for people in industry as it relates to their career. I mean, but even in life, you can be a mentor to someone else that you wouldn't typically think that you would. I don't need necessarily a woman to be my mentor because I am a woman. Sometimes I need that typical white male in industry that's been doing it for 30 years. I need their perspective. I need their history. I need their skill set to some degree, right? So there's an ability to learn from everyone, but it has to be intentional. It has to be something that you're willing to work at, because it is work. It's work to ask the right questions. It's work to actively listen and to understand rather than throwing back a response. These are critical pieces to growth. I can tell you for myself that I have some of the greatest mentors. I probably would not be where I am today without them. What advice would I give to men that are mentoring? I would ask that you get men that have daughters to mentor. I found the best success. Doesn't mean that you can't, but for me, I would say when they have daughters, it's a little bit easier. They have a unique experience in that they recognize that their daughter is born, didn't ask to be born, and it is likely that they will make less, and it's not their fault, right? It opens up a whole new conversation for them in particular. I would say for those that don't have children, or aren't choosing to for whatever their reasons are, doesn't matter to me, but they don't have children. I would say to them, come to it with how you would want someone you care about in your life to be treated. Be truthful, be honest, but do not be callous. These are still people, regardless of their gender. We've got Brandon. In your travels around the nation, have you noticed differences in how groups of color interact with energy-based location? Are there any exemplar states policies that are worth studying? All right. I was in Bakersfield, California last week. It's oil country, right? And so you have Department of Energy, who's basically like, down with, dirty fossil fuels. That's the perception. And I go out there and I meet 200 women that are in this industry, and they take me out. And most of the workers are people of color. And so you have to think, if we say forget oil completely, what does that do to that population that have really good jobs? They may be the first in their families to go to college because of oil. What does it mean for them? That interaction changed their perception of government with me being there, because I understood the assignment that they had. When I asked them really strong questions about the environmental impacts, about where they live, where they choose to live, the money that they're making, what the transition looks like, they were honest with me that they were scared. And I was honest with them, right? We don't go from oil to clean energy overnight. There are tons of things that we produced based off of oil. Most of our clothing is made as a byproduct of oil, right? Like there are tons of ways. And so I expressed to them very clearly that it's not a switch, but you do have an obligation to be involved in this change, whether that's having your companies invest in diversifying their portfolios so that you can learn something different, or you educating yourself about other technologies or where we're going, staying in the know and being able to switch as needed and as you see fit, right? There are tons of oil companies looking at carbon capture. There are tons of oil companies looking at geothermal. If you're not on that path, you need to be, right? There are amazing people in our industry, absolutely amazing. But to your question in particular, California is heavily regulated. I've been to Texas in oil country, and I've been to California, and it is very different. Has a lot to do with their permitting, has it done to do with just their overall regulations. In California, I saw that they were saving geckos by using $1 million to set up fencing because this particular species of geckos were on the endangered species list. Mind you, this is on federal land where you cannot build a fence. So it's more like a half wall to keep them there and to keep their population safe. That's unheard of in Texas. It's a different world. So that's an easy example in my last 9 weeks. Other questions? I think there was a question before.
Hey, we did have one other question come in directly to me. What advice would you give to a small firm that wants to be part of the solution, but happens to be founded by two partners who are not of color?
Team up. Find a diverse company and get with them and say, look, you can even mentor another company and say, let's make a working agreement. Let's do some work together. Let me show you, let me expose you to other opportunities. That's an easy thing to do. Go into a joint venture, right? And do the agreement justice. I'm not saying that you've got to give them 70%, you only take 30. Make it a 50-50, make it make sense. But to small firms, absolutely partner up.
I think we're starting to see the need for collaboration at a level that perhaps hasn't been traditional in the old school energy industry, where competition was so essential. And so maybe you could also speak to that effort that I think clearly DOE is really fostering with potentially the hydrogen hubs and all of the other efforts that are coming out there. I think we're also diversifying the energy perception of what energy actually is, not just the workforce as well. And hopefully that can lead to more diversity in all aspects. And is that sort of some underpinnings that the DOE is working?
100%. Yeah, I mean, what I learned is that there are these teaming lists for certain opportunities. And so it's public. You can go as a company and you can add your name to a list and you say what we do as an organization and that we're willing to team up. And then you can contact the other folks on that list. And so it might be something for advanced manufacture, it might be something for recycling, and say, you may produce batteries. And so you have the equipment to maybe recycle them, but you don't have the collection infrastructure to do it. So there's another company that will go and actually seek out the batteries and bring them to your facility. That's a teaming list. That's an enterprise if you come together for one of our funding opportunities. If that goes well, what can you do, right? There's other things that we have here. We have a mentee protege program that's within what we call OSDBU. It's the Office of Small Disadvantaged Businesses. And so that program will make you a subcontractor under an existing contract. The difficult part is that you would have to advocate for yourself to these big companies that already have contracts, and they do their due diligence because they don't want to run the risk of losing their contract with us. But if you're good, you're good, right? You approach them, you say, look, I know that this program exists. I want to work with you. Here's what I can do. They then vet you, right? They're going to go through that process and make sure you can do what you say you're doing. And then there's a possibility of you gaining all of their past performance on your sort of what we call like your government record. Like, have you done business with us? If you haven't done business directly, you are considered a subcontractor to one of our primes. You can gain all of their experience. So now when you apply on your own, you have all of that. That's called OSDBU. You can just type in OSDBU on Google and just put in DOE. Every federal office has an OSDBU office, including government, including military, right? All of our offices has one. And so they're very much responsible for increasing minorities, right? So there's tons more, but you all can certainly email me. I will answer your questions, whatever you need from me. If I can support, I certainly will. And working to diversify. We have more questions.
Yeah, of course.
Any recommendations for best networking spaces to find experience? HBCUs, right? If you want the specialties, you want engineering, go to HBCUs, right? But know when you walk into those spaces that they have other options. So you've got to have at your organization the support. If I'm going to an HBCU, most of them are in the southern region, and I'm coming to the Northeast. It's cold, it's expensive to live, and I'm alone. You're asking me to move to another state for great pay for the most part, but where am I going to get my hair done? Where do I buy my hair products? Where do I get my nails done? Where do I get local food that I like? Do you have oxtails in the Northeast? I don't know because I may have never visited. If you don't supply me with that support, know that there's another firm in a place where I'm comfortable that I can go to and make just as much money to support me. So you've got to be ready for that when you start to bring folks in. right? I would say other networks, right? So you do have ABE, which is the American Association of Blacks in Energy. You do have AE2C, that's the American Association of Asians that want to influence commerce, right? And we're remote. I love that we're remote, but know that there are a lot of energy companies that want you back in the office. So we're not all remote. I wish that we were, but your company might be. So that's a selling point for you. Push that really, really hard. I would say there are other large organizations across the country that you should be tapping into. Tap into your Black Chamber of Commerce. There's a huge network. Tap into your, just call me, right? I will give you the listing. There are tons of groups that are out there that will make sure their membership knows about the opportunities, but make yourself as an organization marketable. But be aware that you've got to be able to support them. I cannot stress that strongly enough. If you bring one or two in, imagine being a woman and walking into a boys club. It's just not friendly. It's just not. So imagine being a person of color walking into a space and not seeing anyone that looks like you. It's weird, right? And it's weird to either feel like the token Black person, okay, I'm the only Black person, so I'm going to get asked all the diversity questions, or I'm going to get asked about my hair, or I'm going to get asked about, do I wear sunscreen, right? Like there are some weird things that happen in spaces. I have been the person where someone has reached across the elevator and touched my hair because it's really curly, and they were not someone that looks like me. It's an uncomfortable thing. It's the same as being a pregnant woman and someone touching your belly. If you did not put it there, do not touch it. Ask for permission, and don't ask and don't touch, right? So think about that as you're going out and trying to recruit in those spaces. I would say reach out to folks like NSBE, right? If you're looking for engineers, they have a national conference. I believe theirs is in March. ABES is in Houston this year, and that's in May 2nd through the 5th. So there are tons and tons of groups that you should be talking to.
Thank you for that. A lot of insight there. So the final question that we received, and again, if you get another one after this, that's fine too. The final question that we received, and it's one that I actually am really excited about, it will conclude in an inspiring way. What are you most excited or optimistic about?
Oh, I'm a practical optimist, right? I'm practical. I think this is a moment to change the wealth gap in America. I think that there is no reason to forget about people that we have forgotten about before. You think about coal and that transition. It was ugly. We know what we've done in the past, and this is a unique opportunity to do better, to do it right. I think that seeing the self-determination of communities to dictate their energy infrastructure, which that'll really allow them to be more resilient, and they'll have more agency of their own. That's what I'm most excited about. I'm excited about providing a pathway of some sort, right? I'm really excited about that opportunity.
I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Building those pipelines, those pathways, building out those opportunities so that the next generation has something that's brighter, more effective, more innovative to look forward to. And it's exciting to know that you're in that position to not just care about these things, but to have real influence and the ability to grow these items as they develop all across our country. I want to just thank you again for joining all of us here today, sharing your insight, providing some comprehensive answers, like some tough questions, some comprehensive answers that we need to hear, because sometimes responses are not just so black and white, it's layered, right? And which is reasonable because we're people. And we have a very complex experiences that exist in this world. And so sometimes having these discussions, it just requires that we tactful and we think through our responses. And I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I know that takes quite a bit of time. Before we close, if you have any final remarks that you'd like to share with the group, I'd like to give you the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. If you need me, I'm here. If you know of a minority business in the energy space, send them my way. I am open to talking to anyone about potential opportunities. I'm open to curating opportunities that we have that they may not know about. I am asking of you to help me prove the federal government wrong. Help me show them that there are minority businesses in this industry that are ready to do business, right? That are ready to be a part of this transition. Help me do that. Again, always a person to call to action for everyone. Please get involved and do something. Educate someone you know about this industry. If you know people of color, if you know someone that is considered diverse, pull them in, show them what's possible here, show them the numbers.
Yeah, numbers don't lie.
That
All
is
right,
correct.
numbers don't lie. Okay, thank you again for joining us, everyone here. I'm going to pass it back on to Danielle. I think you're going to close us out.
Yes, thank you, Ruth, and thank you, Shalaya, for taking the time today to those who submitted questions. This was such an, we also have our next CWEEL New England event happening in January. You know, we thought we'd take some time for holidays. And this is going to be at the National Grid Sustainability Hub in Worcester. We are kicking off the new year with some networking and a healthy you. So Deanna is going to be leading us in a intro level fitness class. We'll have networking and breakfast. So, you know, more details to come on that. Somebody dropped the link on where this recording will be shared. So that's also where you'll be able to find more information about that event. Lastly, I want to say a sincere thank you to everybody again for attending, for submitting questions, and to Ruth and Shalaya for having this discussion, for all of your sincere, genuine answers and very helpful answers as well. Thank you again to the sponsors of this as well. All right, I hope everyone has a great day.